Hello, driven dietitians. Let's dive into how I went from having my private practice be a side hustle to my full-time role. All the things I did to ensure I was set up to quit my job and the security of having a consistent paycheck to running my own full-time business and making even more money than I thought possible within the year. So let's dive into it. I'm Emily. I am a registered dietitian and I have my own private practice. I see women with PCOS and insulin resistance, and I accept insurance. And I went from a side hustle to a full time role in just a year and a half. So let's go into what that means. So when I first started my private practice, I actually started my private practice in 2023. That's when I got my tax ID, my LLC, the things that I, wanted to need to have for like tax purposes, all the things like that. But then I was not thinking about insurance. I wasn't thinking about the population I was going to be working with. At this point, I just wanted to do intuitive eating, food freedom. And I was on Instagram. So I was like, okay, I got to create like a, six-figure launch offer, right? I need to be an influencer. I need to do all these things. I was wrong. I was so wrong. But at this time, I thought I needed to have a really aesthetic website. I needed to have all the handouts curated, and I needed to have a very specific program with worksheets and journal prompts and all these things. And so I was working on these things for about a year, and I had two people work with me. And I spent way more money and time than needed at all to create this website, to try and figure out every little detail of things I needed in order to get people in my world. And so after a year of creating all this, I decided to do a little bit more market research in my area through some of the topics that were interesting to me. So that's when I found the need for PCOS. And I found the community I live in, it was really a high demand. There's so many women struggling with fertility, with their bodies and health, and with weight management and hormones and all the things. And I had so many people in my close world that also were having these struggles. And as someone who was diagnosed with prediabetes in college and reversed that, I was like, insulin resistance, this is perfect. So then I started to think about accepting insurance. So I did all this time, this effort into creating my website, only to have to change it all because I decided to go with a different niche because I felt more passionate, more excited than ever, more ready to share with the people around me. Because yes, I love intuitive eating, but I love being able to support people's health and really like trajectory of their lives and well-being. And I can use intuitive eating skills with that without having to sacrifice health, right? So that's what I did. So once I established that, I started to accept insurance. At the same time, I actually started working for a group telehealth practice. And so I was working for them, seeing 26 plus people a week and building up my own client roster. And so I started with, three of my own clients with insurance and seeing, 26 people. But then I got up to seeing, their full-time load as well as, anywhere from like 10 to 12 people of my own. So I always like to say, like, I felt like I was working two full-time jobs by the time I decided to quit my full-time job and go completely all in my private practice. And so here are the things that I looked out for to ensure that I was ready to do that. So I had built the systems, repeatable marketing skills, the repetition of getting people to come into my world while I was working for this other company. And I could have done things a little bit differently, but that's just what I did. I was learning and it worked out. I mean, I now have a team member. I now make 15K plus months consistently. And I never thought that would be something that would happen so quickly after leaving my full-time job. So for me, as long as I had 10 consistent of my own clients and I knew people would continue to come into my world and I was getting referrals, I knew I could quit my full-time job. So for me, that meant having, anywhere from 7 to 8K months consistently for 3 months before I quit my full-time job. So for me, okay, if I have, $7,000 months in my business, that means I'm at least getting to take home, anywhere, 4,500 outside of, taxes, outside of paying for, my platforms that I have, my website that I curated and didn't really actually bring me any clients in. But for my EHR system, all the things. So for me and my family and my husband, we thought that was a good amount for me to be making. I was making more than I was making in my full-time role. So once I hit the amount I was making in my full-time role and exceeding it, it was kind of a no-brainer. But that is something that I looked at. And I also did the math before. I could have left my full-time job probably 3 months sooner, because once I hit, even 4K months from my business, I would have been making the same amount as I was making in my full-time role, and it would have been enough for us. But I wanted to be more financially secure feeling, because that's just who I am. And I think that's how a lot of us are. And that is 100% okay. So I kept working more and more and more. And I built up to 10 consistent clients in 7 to 8K months. And that's when I quit. I knew it was time. But it wasn't just because I was making that much. And it wasn't just like a fluke of, okay, I made $7,000 and the next month I made $3,000. No, I knew it was going to continue to grow. And that very next month, after I had worked my private practice for a month, I hit my first 10K month, because I had time to network with other healthcare providers. I had more brain power and energy and excitement about my business because I wasn't feeling burned out. And I felt more driven to push myself in my private practice when it comes to marketing, asking for reviews or, testimonials. I felt excited because I knew that this was my path. I knew that this was my business and I was going to pour everything I had into it in order to be successful, because I was so burnt out working for someone else who made me feel like I wasn't actually in control of my patient's care, who required things of me that maybe didn't align with some of my values. And so doing my own practice, I knew I could feel more ethical. I could feel more confident in my skills. I knew I could learn as I went, and it paid off. I made my first 10K month and I didn't look back. So that is what brought me from side hustle to full time. And I worked just for this other company for about a year and a couple of months as I was growing and really started diving into the insurance piece of things, because it was the same time. So I personally could have left my full-time role after a year and I would have been just fine. I would have been probably made more money than I have now. So that is what brought me, and that might look different from you. But if you are a dietitian who is thinking about starting a private practice with insurance, or maybe you have a private practice but you accept insurance on the side of your full-time role, whether it be working for a group telehealth practice or working for as a community dietitian or a clinical dietitian, whatever it may be, you have to figure out what that is for you, and you have to take a little bit of a risk, because risks pay off, and you can always go back and find another job, but you might waste time if you push it off, and the time and energy that you have to pour into your business isn't there if you're also working a full-time job. So if you're like, I need help, I need to know how to make sure that I am transitioning smoothly, make sure I'm having all the correct networking, referral partners in place, that I have leads coming in, that I know I have multiple lead pools, lead sources, and I want to make sure that I have all the insurance things, locked and loaded, all of the, small details, not the website, but the insurance piece down to make sure you get paid the money you deserve when you see people with insurance and the referrals coming in. Check out my, Insurance Mastery Academy if you're just starting. But if you already have an established contracts with insurance and you're looking for support with building your referral partnerships or the back end of insurance billing, you want to walk through denials and case studies or you want to build your programs to be able to talk about them from an insurance standpoint. So when I first started, I was building all these things, but we can have, talk about our services as a quote program with insurance, with the insurance model, because that's appetizing to people. That draws people in. You solve a problem and you can make your services fit the mark to bring people in your doors that you actually want to work with. So if that's you, fill out the dietitian mentorship form, or you can send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram, and I look forward to supporting you, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.